I'm Ben, and you're about to join a caving expedition to Mexico. I'll be going along as your guide and your host, although I'm not a caver, I'm not a speleologist or a geologist. I'm just a sailor with a camera. It's a 23-hour drive from Austin, Texas to the Mesa Juarez in the Sierra Madre Mountains, and 12 of those hours will be spent in four-wheel drive, up tortuous mountain roads including the Paso del Muerte, the Pass of Death, where a sheer drop of 700 feet awaits the vehicle whose driver fails in diligence. We filled Matt's truck with food, water, and gear, then crammed in for the long drive. As with any long road trips, we set off excited and happy to leave mainstream behind. If anticipation could be bottled, then Matt, Linda, and I were drinking from a classic vintage, and after a few hours, most of the crew was passed out. We're to meet a group of cavers, mostly Texans, and these men and women will be spending the next week searching for unexplored caves that may connect to the longest air-filled cave in Mexico, the 22nd longest cave in the world. If discovered, it would be the highest possible entrance to the Sistema Purificación on the Mesa Juarez in the Sierra Madre Mountains of northern Mexico. Our leader is Bill Steele. He's the Texas chapter president of the Explorers Club and a lifetime caver. He's published speleological papers and books on caves from all over the North American continent. As an Explorers Club member, I've been invited to come along and document the expedition. And with us we'll be carrying Explorers Club flag number 44, making this an official flag expedition. The Explorers Club was founded in 1904 and sports a who's who of world-class explorers. At the time of the club's inception, the poles, both north and south, epitomized the greatest expeditionary goals of the century. Within a few years, the club's members and their colleagues had conquered both of them. To date, the Explorers Club flag has been flown with the first to summit the highest mountains on Earth, to touch the bottom of the deepest ocean at 35,840 feet below sea level, and with the first to set foot on the moon. Alumni include Sir Edmund Hillary, Don Walsh, and Neil Armstrong, to name but a few. My membership to the Explorers Club is not through caving. From December 1999 to 2008, I traveled the world aboard my sailboat, Gypsy Soul. She transported me to some of the most remote places on Earth, where I lived among isolated cultures, hunting, fishing, and trading with the islanders. For over 8 years, my life became as natural as those with whom I interacted. Coastal people the world over share a love for the ocean, so while interacting, we shared a common bond. I also made frequent travels into the continental interiors to make the occasional winter for myself in the mountains. Of my time abroad, almost 3 years were spent traveling inland to experience the geographical and cultural wonders of about 50 countries. I did this to satisfy my own curiosity about the world that we live in, and along the way I documented and photographed my experiences. When I returned to America, the Explorers Club graciously gave me a membership, and these days, between expeditions and business, I'm working to compile a book about chasing that dream. But I'm not a caver, and in going to the mountains of Mexico with this rugged group of explorers, the analogy of being a fish out of water may well ring true, possibly that of a clownfish, and hopefully not that of a dead fish. There have been recent clashes between drug cartels and Mexican authorities in the border region. There have been numerous reports of extortion taxed on travelers by corrupt law enforcement. There have been kidnappings. For weeks leading up to the trip, our families expressed concern about the constant news reports, and the day we arrived at the border, several friends living on the U.S. side warned us that it was unsafe to drive in Mexico at night. This put a real edge of pressure on our expedition. Nighttime roadblocks, carjackings, and kidnappings have been reported on the roads leading south. On our side of the border, we met with 3 other vehicles in the pre-dawn hours. Then, as the day broke, we caravanned across the border and drove deep into Mexico to reach the small town of Baratal during daylight hours. It was our gateway to the mountains, where the last showers and the final provisioning would be done. Tortuous logging roads lay ahead, leading more than 10,000 feet above sea level. It took 13 hours to traverse 37 miles up the mountain. That was 13 hours of lurching, white knuckles, whiplash, and battering the skids of our overloaded vehicles. In low four-wheel drive, we plowed through mud, up steep rocky switchbacks, then through the clouds and into the old-growth forests. We drove so far off the grid, it was like stepping back in time. Mountain people the world over are protective of their land and culture. They live simply, efficiently, and naturally. Outsiders can easily step on the wrong side of their sensibilities. Our expedition would straddle the Christmas holidays, so I brought with us 20 small toys. Then, while interacting with the locals on the drive up the mountains, and when asking directions and permission, we gave every little boy and every little girl that crossed our paths a Christmas present, and said Feliz Navidad. By the time we reached the top of the mountain, half our toys were distributed, and a trail of goodwill followed us up the mountainside like breadcrumbs. The Mesa Juarez is a geographical mass of twisted limestone. It contains thousands of kilometers of caves. Many interconnect, but most are blind, or in layman's terms, dead ends. Unique to the area is that most start off as a deep, natural, vertical shaft, or pit, and this requires rappelling and ascending equipment to make sorties. Over the past 20 years, Steele and others have mapped more than 200 blind pits. We bivouacked behind a small hamlet called Rancho Nuevo, where a young family lives. The three brothers, one with a wife and two children, were our hosting neighbors. The two kids, a boy and a girl, received a toy race car and a My Little Pony as early Christmas presents. Permission was then given to camp with their pigs. In the first week, our group has discovered several virgin pits and surveyed them. One in particular is promising. Near the bottom of a 150-foot drop is a tight shaft leading vertically downward. A rock is dropped and can be heard for several seconds bouncing off the walls as it descends further into the pit. There's a shoulder-wide natural tube leading further into the abyss. It's never been explored, and it leads to another and yet another. Our youngest and most nimble team will eventually descend over 590 feet below the surface. For 5 days in a row, they'll descend with more gear and more rope to rig a series of belays. Caving, as with the greatest explorers the world has ever known, is about going where none have ever ventured. It's about being the first. It's about being the discovery. It's in the name of science and testing one's own mettle. One of the rewards is to name a renowned cave, to have been the first to find it, the first to explore it, and the first to survey it, from one end to the other.
So here we are, the stupid window.
And there's the hole.
That's the tiger hole.
Was just born out of
that stupid.
And a 50-meter drop right out of the bottom of that hole and a rebelay.
Yeah. I have fun though.
Say it again where we can see truth in your eyes.
I have fun.
Were they the first to explore the cave? Yes. Where did it lead?